Item 7 in the order paper is the adjournment. The question is the Assembly do now adjourn, and in conjunction with the Business Committee, the Speaker has given leave to Gemma Dolan to raise the matter of the potential of the South West Acute Hospital as a cross-border hospital. Gemma, are you ready to go? Minister, are you ready to go? I call on Gemma Dolan. You will have up to 15 minutes, Gemma.
I rise today to speak about the South West Acute Hospital, a modern hospital with untapped potential as a true cross-border healthcare resource, and the urgent need for leadership to make that potential a reality. When this hospital was commissioned, its business plan received approval on the basis that the hospital would be positioned within a cross-border service network for trauma, emergency and elective care. In other words, the development and commissioning of future services would be done on a cross-border basis to ensure the sustainability and clinical viability of services. Yet, more than a decade on, that vision has not been followed through. It is clear that this area needs a new, ambitious, whole-system, all-island healthcare approach that does not accept existing constraints put in place as a result of partition on this island. We cannot continue to live how we are. Fermanagh and Omagh is a uniquely rural district, representing 20% of the North's landmass and 6% of its population. It has the longest share of the border and is deeply interconnected with its neighbouring southern border counties in terms of trade, agriculture, workforce, mobility, daily life and indeed cultural connections. Health cooperation will improve the range of service availability, reduce travel times, particularly for emergency care, and support shared workforce planning. An integrated cross-border model of care is an absolute priority for the people of Fermanagh and Omagh. The breadth of health issues raised by my constituents, from all-island paediatric pathology services to autism provision to suicide support, all point to a simple truth. Our current systems are failing to meet people's needs. These are not isolated concerns, they are symptoms of deeply rooted systemic shortcomings in how healthcare is planned and delivered on this island. On this small island, we operate two health systems, each facing deep structural challenges. It makes no sense that on an island of just over 7 million people, we run two entirely separate health systems trying to solve the same problems. Waiting lists in the north are unacceptably long, rural areas like ours are especially hard hit, and patients continue to fall between the cracks. Yet, where cooperation has been embraced, we see success. The All-Island Congenital Heart Disease Network has delivered world-class outcomes for children. The North West Cancer Centre in Derry enables a catchment area consisting of approximately 500,000 residents to avail of both chemotherapy and radiotherapy services closer to home. The current CEO of the Western Trust is on record saying that without this cross-border population, there would not have been enough people to sustain this service. There is ample evidence and proof that when we approach healthcare at the scale of our island, not the scale of partition, people benefit and we can achieve world-class clinical outcomes for the people we serve. Why, then, has the same logic not been used in SWAH to increase footfall and to build resilient emergency surgical services? In July 2025, the Health Minister in the South, Jennifer Carroll McNeill, stated, "Working collaboratively to address healthcare challenges in both jurisdictions is of the utmost importance, and as such, enhancing North-South cooperation will continue to be a priority for my department." Indeed, I am of the understanding that when our own Health Minister gave evidence recently to the Joint Implementation Committee on the Good Friday Agreement in the Oireachtas, you rightly indicated your support for cross-border health service development and implementation. Cross-border cooperation is already happening in places, but there needs to be more leadership on this. It must be developed at scale, because when it comes to health, there should be no borders. So I'd like to ask the Minister today, and thank the Minister for coming to the Chamber, first of all, but I would like to ask you, Minister, what have you done to build upon this cooperation in terms of the future sustainability of SWAH, particularly in relation to emergency surgical care? Whilst we do acknowledge the scaling up of elective care in the hospital, these are short-term measures dependent on independent sector provision and do not address the fundamental long-term issues of emergency surgery provision within the area. This is echoed in the recent work of the International Centre for Local and Regional Development, whose report on community and spatial planning in the Irish border region underlines how joined-up cross-border approaches to planning can deliver better outcomes for communities that span administrative boundaries. Their research shows that coordinated planning doesn't just improve services, it strengthens the fabric of border communities themselves. Healthcare should be no different. We also heard these calls made powerfully at the Enniskillen event hosted by Pat Cullen MP, delivering rural health and care in a new Ireland. That event brought together voices from across health and rural communities, highlighting not just the crisis we face, but the opportunities that exist if we reimagine how health and care are delivered across this island. The message was clear. Rural health needs a system that is equitable, sustainable and rooted in the needs of people north and south, without artificial barriers. People want to talk about the future, about what a new and united Ireland could look like, and healthcare is one of the first places they go, because cooperation in health just makes sense. An all-island national health and care service, public, universal, free at the point of delivery and based on clinical need, will be more sustainable and ensure that everyone on this island can access the best services available. Sinn Féin will continue to champion this integrated all-Ireland approach, ensuring specialist care is accessible to people north and south on the basis of need. The future of health and care in a new Ireland is of enormous importance to citizens, and the South West Acute Hospital can and should be at the heart of a cross-border solution. Let us not waste another year of opportunity, another patient left waiting, or another family burdened by inadequate care. I'm calling on the Health Minister to show leadership and make moves to build the health service of the future for all our communities without borders and with the dignity every person deserves.
Thank you very much indeed, Gemma. And all other speakers will now.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I very much welcome the chance to speak on this important adjournment debate this evening, one which I feel compelled to contribute to. As it has been stated before, the SWAH is a state-of-the-art modern hospital purpose-built to provide high-quality, safe and efficient health care in a rural region. There is no doubt whatsoever that the SWAH deserves to have and must have a long and secure future, and as such I'm very supportive of cross-border opportunities also being explored, and it's an issue I've already raised directly with counterparts in the Republic of Ireland. For the people of Fermanagh and West Tyrone, SWAH is not simply just another hospital within a wider system. It's a vital lifeline. Rural healthcare must never be allowed to be treated as an afterthought. Access and geography matters in Fermanagh, and we know this all too well. And I do truly believe the Minister recognises that. I've accompanied him on multiple visits to the hospital now, and most recently only a few weeks ago, and there is barely a staff group he hasn't met or a corner of the hospital he hasn't seen. The South West Acute Hospital was designed with the future in mind. Its individual rooms, modern infrastructure and theatre capacity positions it perfectly as a major hub for high volume but also complex surgery moving forward. At a time when we are all acutely aware of the intolerable waits facing patients across Northern Ireland, SWAH is demonstrating through actions on the ground that it has the facilities capable of expanding care and playing its full part in reducing those backlogs. The Minister has in recent months been able to deliver the utilisation of more of the previously uncommissioned theatre capacity, with further plans well advanced. That is tangible progress. It demonstrates what political determination and focused advocacy can achieve. It shows that when we fight for SWAH, we deliver for SWAH. However, support for the hospital cannot be complacent. It must be active and vigilant, because we have seen how fragile public confidence can become when decisions are taken without transparency or proper oversight. The temporary removal of emergency general surgery by the Western Trust in late 2022 was deeply concerning. It occurred only a few weeks after the Assembly and Executive had collapsed, but also only after the previous Minister for Health had sought written assurances over safety and planning that were never provided. That understandably undermined public confidence. When communities feel decisions are being imposed upon them without proper explanation or accountability, that concern is not only justified, it is powerful and entirely legitimate. Within weeks of the Assembly being restored in early 2024, the then Health Minister ordered a REQUIA review to ensure that the issues were properly examined and examined independently. That was an important and necessary step. And whilst the REQUIA report provided some assurances, and most importantly, an agreement from the Trust on what further measures were needed, all local MLAs will be aware further challenges remain. And so I trust that REQUIA, in their most recent work in the hospital, will be able to ensure that further progress is made. One of the greatest knocks to public confidence in recent times was the failed attempt of a consultation by the Trust last summer. As we will all remember, the Western Trust launched a ham-fisted consultation aimed at making the temporary closure permanent, and even though the glaring shortcomings and errors were all entirely obvious, it still took the current Minister to the very unusual step of directly intervening for the Trust to listen. The Minister ordered the Trust to halt that flawed process and to instead develop a long-term vision plan for the SWAH. But Minister, whilst I've long believed the work was too important for the Trust to try to rush through, in the 7 months that have passed since then, the local community and key stakeholders would have liked to have seen more of a vision plan than they actually have. They aren't expecting the final document in their hands, but they would have liked to have at least had an assurance of detailed conversations and the plannings underway. Yet again, this Trust is falling below standard. But as you know, Minister, as local MLAs and people that live among the community, we will not accept short-term fixes dressed up as strategic reform. We will not accept consultation processes that undermine trust rather than build it. As public representatives, I hope we can give you our assurances that we will assist you in promoting the hospital as a safe and sustainable hospital and as a great place for any one staff member to come and work at. The SWAH's future is secure. I have no doubt whatsoever of that. Its outlook is one of growth and stability. It should be a centre that delivers acute services, maximises its modern design, expands elective capacity, supports staff and retains public confidence. But that confidence won't be retained unless we continue to listen to the strength of local concerns and treat them with the seriousness they deserve. In closing, although we acknowledge the potentials of cross-border health services, we need to ask what appetite is there really from our counterparts in the Republic. Today, I reaffirm this party's unwavering commitment to the South West Acute Hospital. We recognise the strategic importance, we recognise the strength of feeling within the community, and we will continue to stand up firmly and consistently to ensure that SWAH has not just a future, but a thriving one. And one last thing, Minister, where is the vision plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
Lash Cancolia, and I welcome the opportunity to speak on this adjournment debate brought by my party colleague this afternoon on the future of the South West Acute Hospital and indeed its future on a cross-border basis. The South West Acute Hospital is a lifeline for people across counties Tyrone and Fermanagh and the wider border region. It serves rural communities who already have hours to travel to access emergency and specialist surgical care. For many families, it is the difference between timely treatment and dangerous delay. The clinical evidence is clear. There is a direct correlation between time delays for treatment and increased mortality rates. We must approach this issue with ambition and with realism. Border communities have long endured the disadvantage of partition, fragmented services, unnecessary duplication in some areas and glaring gaps in others. Healthcare should not be one of those gaps. We now have a genuine opportunity to develop the South West Acute Hospital as a cross-border centre of excellence, working in partnership with services in other border counties. Indeed, when this hospital was commissioned, it was always anticipated that the expansion of services would be on a cross-border basis. Approximately 4 theatres and 2 wards were to be commissioned for use on that basis. However, the Department of Health and the Western Trust have done little to realise the commissioning intent, and as a result of these important resources have remained uncommissioned for these purposes. It is well recognised that we can address the challenges with recruitment and retention of expert clinical staff through the delivery of an all-island service and to a population of 7 million. Continuing to provide services to populations of 5 million in the south and less than 2 million in the north will continue to be a barrier to recruitment and retention and must be urgently addressed. Staff at the South West Acute Hospital are highly expert and committed professionals who deserve certainty about the hospital's future. Repeated reviews, service changes, staffing challenges have created understandable anxiety within that community. We must now provide a clear strategic direction. The existing models of all-island service delivery show that this can be delivered safely, effectively, and deliver world-class clinical outcomes for the citizens on both sides of the border. Importantly, this debate must be grounded in the needs and experiences of our rural populations. Rural demographics must be considered when commissioning health and care services. This is also about equality. Leis Ceann Comhairle, rural border communities are entitled to integrated solutions that actually reflect how they live their lives along the border region, and staff are entitled to stability, investment and long-term planning going forward. Minister, I want to address the ongoing suspension of emergency general surgery at the South West Acute Hospital. 7 months ago, you asked the Trust to pause the consultation on the permanent removal of EGS. 7 months later, the people of Fermanagh and Tyrone are still waiting for a way forward. I mean, the prolonged uncertainty is simply unacceptable, and again, we are into 8 months, 9 months down the line. Yesterday, our party colleagues and constituency colleagues across this chamber stood with members of our local community and the local lobby group SWAH, and I want to take the opportunity to welcome Helen and Jimmy. They've made it up the road for 2 days on the bounce now, so they have had a lot of miles on the clock as they join us as well. People gathered outside the front steps to call for emergency general surgery to be reformed. These are patients, families and healthcare workers who are deeply care about their local hospital and the safety of service in their area. They deserve honesty, transparency and respect, not confusion and uncertainty, as what has been shown to date. The Trust has indicated that it has written to your department to ask whether you wish to make the case for commissioning a new emergency general surgery service model. I recently submitted a question to you on this very issue, which unfortunately you haven't answered to date. Given the strength of public concern and the ongoing uncertainty, I ask you to provide clarity today. So I'll put the question directly, Minister. Have you requested that the Western Trust develop a fully costed business case in order to deliver a new EGS surgical service at the South West Acute Hospital? The people of Fermanagh and Tyrone deserve answers.
For the development of services, and there's no doubt that the South West Acute Hospital, where it is situated, lends itself to those cross-border services. But I think in coming to this debate this evening, there are a few fundamental things that we must consider prior to moving to any such development of the cross-border services, and that is, firstly, there must be protection for the local capacity. The South West Acute Hospital, a state-of-the-art hospital, as has been mentioned today already, was built to serve the people of the rural south-west quarter of Northern Ireland, and we must not do anything to undermine or hinder the development of that for the delivery of those people. And we did see the protest of Stormont yesterday because of the removal of the emergency general surgery. And the people that were here were people from the rural hinterland of Fermanagh who were here to lobby for the restoration of this service and for others to see the hospital utilised to its full potential for the service delivery of the people in the area and from the whole southwest quarter of Northern Ireland. And therefore I believe that first of all priority must be given to protect the local capacity. Then we have the issue of waiting lists. And we all know that waiting lists in Northern Ireland are already amongst the worst in the UK, and I do thank the Minister for the work that he has been doing in recent times to seek to reduce those waiting lists. And therefore local people must be given priority. Now I am sure that, like me, the Assembly members around the chamber here on a weekly basis are dealing in their constituency offices with health issues every week, lengthy waiting times for constituents and so forth. And until we get this issue resolved, then quite frankly I don't think that we need to be adding to the problem by bringing in further pressure onto the South West Acute Hospital. We look then at the funding issue. And the South West Acute Hospital is funded through the Northern Ireland Health Budget. Therefore, Northern Ireland taxpayers should not be subject to reduced access as a result of capacity being allocated elsewhere. This would not happen in any other jurisdiction. And if cross-border usage were to be expanded to the South West Acute Hospital, funding fully and consistently would need to be following the patient, or would the Health Minister be expected to find that funding from an already stretched health budget? What about our staffing issues? We all know that we face severe staffing issues across our health and social care system. So if the South West Hospital were to become a cross-border hospital, would that result in the sharing of staff across the border? And I do know from conversations some of my colleagues have had that this would be a logistical and HR problem to develop and to deliver. And then what about the extra demand? Our doctors and nurses are already overstretched, and adding additional demand risks burnout and retention issues. And in rural trusts such as the Western Health and Social Care Trust, staff recruitment is always difficult at the very best of times. Therefore, extra demand in the absence of extra staff would render it unsustainable. We are all too well aware of the downgrade of services at the South West Hospital in recent times. For example, the changes to the emergency general surgery, which we are all passionate about and want to see it restored. Therefore, before any consideration is given to exploring cross-border access, I believe we must focus our energy in stabilising and restoring full services in the South West Acute Hospital and across the Western Health and Social Care Trust area for the local population. When we look at the hospital at home concept, the Western Health and Social Care Trust have made provision for the services in Galvin and in Enniskillen, but there's no provision whatsoever for this service in Omagh, which points to a real disparity in service delivery, with services not being delivered evenly and equally across the trust area. Until all these issues are resolved, I really see no merit in adding a greater burden on a system already under pressure. And any decisions taken must be taken incrementally with full Assembly scrutiny and transparently. Thank you.
I call on Colin Gildernew. Colin.
Agad Lascan Corlia and my colleagues from Fermanagh have dealt largely with a lot of that detailed issue. I suppose I would like to touch upon just a bit more of the general stuff around some of this issue, because it's really critical, and it's critical for South West Acute Hospital, because it's not just the hinterland to the south of it that is excluded from playing a role as a part of it. It's also because of the geography of it to the west and the east. So I think that makes it really important. And I was reflecting back before Christmas, the Brantley Bard Centre hosted actually a meeting of the Southern Trust, AIPB, and it was very noticeable that every one of them that was coming to that meeting arrived extremely stressed, because you'd have thought they were being taken to Timbuktu instead of the Brantley. And Gail Gildernew, councillor, who's a member of the AIPB, in her opening remarks pointed out to all of those from the Southern Trust that they weren't by any means at the extreme end of their area. In fact, they were about 30 miles from Craigavon. They had another 30 miles almost to go to 5 Mile Town. However, she also pointed out to them they're about 3 miles from Monaghan, where they were sitting, so there's a bit of a lesson in that. The other thing that I want to focus on is, during my time, and I was very privileged to serve as chair of the Health Committee here, and during my time in that role, I met with the Children's Hospital in Crumlin in relation to the paediatric cardiology service, and exploring with them, as I have mentioned previously here, the potential for a paediatric pathology service. And they, in fact, indicated that, similar to the point that has been made earlier by my colleague, that for some particular services you actually require kind of an economy of scale to provide a full rota, and to enable a rota to be recruited that allows everyone to be confident they will get their time off, they will get training opportunities, they will get the volume of cases to work with that. During that same conversation, interestingly, the colleagues from Crumlin Hospital stated that sometimes very good ideas between professionals and clinicians go into the department, and they said that sometimes those great ideas go there to die. Now, I don't think that was said in a disparaging way. I think it was just simply that the priorities within departments didn't have the same kind of focus or momentum in relation to developing services. However, it's often been said to me that clinicians and professionals are often well ahead of where sometimes trusts and departments are in relation to that. It's also the case at the very end of that last mandate, when we came to drawing up our legacy report, we stipulated as one of the key recommendations from that outgoing committee that one of the areas, and this was based on what we were hearing from sectors right across cancer, children's services, older persons, the need to cooperate better on a small island such as this in relation to delivering healthcare was very, very stark, and that then became one of our main recommendations. Agreed by all parties, agreed by everyone as a priority. So, in closing, Minister, I just wonder, would it be the case that you would commit to looking at putting a task force in place that could look between the different areas at what services could be delivered better in that region using South West Acute Hospital in the way in which it was intended to serve its wider hinterland?
You call him, I call him Tom Buchanan. Tom.
Thank you, Mr.
Debate, and I welcome the opportunity to speak on the potential of the South West Acute Hospital as a genuine cross-border hospital and what that could mean for patients across the island. Like other members, I have met with the SWAH campaign, and I've met with them today. I believe they're here, and I want to assure the people who live in Fermanagh of Alliance's commitment to ensuring that the South West Acute Hospital is an active asset to their community and also becoming a hub for elective care for patients across Northern Ireland. I have had the opportunity to meet with local council members and businesses to hear of their concerns about healthcare in the area as well. I visited the SWAH recently with the Health Committee, and it is very clear that more services could be delivered within the hospital. It is a very impressive and modern building. But certainly I think there could be more delivered there, and we will certainly work to achieve that. Politics must play no part in ensuring that we have a health service and hospital systems that work to deliver for everyone across Northern Ireland. In healthcare, the focus must always be on better outcomes. Geography should never be a barrier to care. When we discuss cross-border healthcare, the debate should be grounded in practical experience and measurable results. There are already clear examples on the island where structured cooperation has strengthened specialist services and delivered better outcomes for patients. And I want to raise a couple of examples of cross-border healthcare that are already in operation. The All-Ireland Congenital Heart Disease Network and the impact it has had on children's heart surgery is one of the most compelling examples. Survival rates for children with congenital heart conditions in the Republic and in Northern Ireland are now said to match the best global results. Figures covering 2023 to 2024 highlight increased survival rates and continued advancements in paediatric cardiac care, reaffirming the importance of delivering world-class healthcare for children across Ireland. The data shows that congenital heart disease procedures increased overall, with paediatric surgical procedures up by 5% from the previous year, reflecting progress in service delivery. Crucially, survival rates remained among the best globally, with an overall 3-year survival ratio of 98.6%, exceeding predicted outcomes. Another established example of cooperation in practice is the North West Cancer Centre at Altnagevan, which provides cancer care to more than 500,000 people in the western region of Northern Ireland and the adjoining areas in the south. This centre has been awarded the European Society for Medical Oncology accreditation, having met 13 strict criteria based on World Health Organization recommendations on the provision of palliative care for patients with cancer. This accreditation recognises cancer centres that provide the highest standard of integrated oncology and palliative care services, with the goal of improving research, education and clinical practice by setting clear standards for service development. Academics have also emphasised the importance of this type of cooperation. Professor Mark Lawler, Associate Pro-Vice-Chancellor at Queen's University, has said that sharing knowledge and funding could mean that governments fight cancer, which he described as a common enemy, rather than competing against each other. He argued that governments should work closer and harder together to conquer cancer and deliver better outcomes for patients across the island. And that's an important point. We should not overlook cross-border initiatives when designing a health service that works for people, particularly those in border regions who too often feel overlooked themselves. And I know the Minister is very open to cross-border cooperation on health issues. These examples demonstrate that cross-border healthcare is neither experimental or symbolic. It is rooted in better outcomes. However, aside from the notable exceptions I've mentioned, collaboration remains limited. To date, the approach has been minimalist and is often project-specific. The Health Committee have met with the Committee for Health in the South to discuss opportunities for further cross-border collaboration around health, and the North-South Interparliamentary Association has met several times and had healthcare-related presentations on cross-border cancer care and perinatal mental health care, and the mother and baby unit that is not available anywhere on this island was raised as a possibility of a project to work together. It has been suggested that key healthcare services, including ear, nose and throat surgery, orthopaedics and treatments of rare diseases, cancer care and acute mental health services could all be potential areas for future All-Ireland initiatives. The South West Acute Hospital presents substantial opportunities for innovation in service provision on a cross-border basis. The South West Acute Hospital has clear potential. The question is whether or not we have the political will and the strategic clarity to realise that potential in a way that strengthens services across Northern Ireland and delivers better outcomes for patients. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I now call on Colin McGrath. Colin.
Deputy Speaker, and as in any of these discussions, I start.
Indeed. And I now call on Colin McGrath. Colin.
Deputy Speaker, and as in any of these discussions, I start by acknowledging that the surprise in the room, I'm not from Fermanagh. But it doesn't mean that as an SDLP representative I won't stand up for the people that are fighting this campaign, because one of the things that is quite similar to my own constituency, I live in the town of Downpatrick, not dissimilar in ways to Enniskillen, but my constituency is mostly rural. And the one thing that is consistent and is becoming, I think, a bit of a pattern is how rural communities are being left behind whenever it comes to healthcare in general, but how they're being left behind in terms of healthcare, specifically when it comes to the emergency-based treatments. And it seems that those emergency-based facilities, be it surgery, emergency departments and otherwise, are starting to find themselves just being more urban-based. And I think that that is fundamentally unfair on those of us that live in rural communities. So I welcome the opportunity to have this debate about the rural provision that is in the SWAH. It covers for those communities across Fermanagh, Tyrone, and indeed parts of Donegal, Cavan and Monaghan. And the fear is in this debate that we could fall down into this north-south, British-Irish. And I think that that is somewhere that we shouldn't go to. Because whenever you are sick and you need emergency treatment, you want to get to the nearest facility as quick as possible. And it's an absolute fundamental part here is that for emergency surgery, for the population of Fermanagh, to have to travel to the Altnagelvin is not good enough. 2.5 hours of a journey for emergency anything is just ridiculous. It's counterproductive to be able to say to somebody that you can get emergency treatment, but it's 2.5 hours away. And then we also have the other concern here for people living in rural communities, but especially for those that are living in Fermanagh. That's 2.5 hours when the ambulance arrives. But the ambulance has to get to you first. And we know that at the moment, through no fault of the dedicated paramedic staff and those in the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service, but the ambulance service is not able to respond in the times that it needs to in the rural communities. And I just do not know what it must be like for some people that need emergency surgery, that ring for an ambulance, that might take an hour, that then takes 2.5 hours, and then whenever you arrive, you have to be triaged. And if you've gone via the SWAH, by the time you get up to Altnagelvin, you have to be triaged a second time, adding more and more and more time for a service that is supposed to be emergency. And we invested in the hospital. The hospital was built. And then we are left in a scenario where the services are removed. And then we have the trust who I'm sure are people that feel that they're doing a good job in their own way, but they are using statistics to try and prove to people that the decisions that they want to take are the right decisions. But I wonder if it is, and I reflect on some figures from some of the experts, the CHKS organisation, because we keep hearing about a RAMI. This is this measurement that we're just supposed to accept and sit down and say, oh, well, the RAMI score is grand, so therefore let's shut down the emergency surgery and forget about it. But this organisation themselves, that are independent but analyse the information, they're not so sure. They say that it does not show statistical significant change. They say that they need longer periods of time to be able to assess the data. They talk about average length of stay. There's no change in average length of stay. And I think whenever it comes down to it, this is about that old saying of pound, shilling and pence. It's how they can run the service that they're running and just simply put everything into one centre because it's easier to run. That's not fair on the rural communities. And Minister, we need somebody that's going to stick up for rural communities, because this is where the parallels to my own scenario in Southdown are so similar. People in rural communities are now frightened. They're frightened that at their moment of need, the health service is not going to be there for them. And I think we need to do all that we can collectively, north, south, east, west, across the executive, with the opposition. We all have to do everything we can so that we serve the people right across the constituencies that we represent and not just parts of it. And key to that are places like the SWAH being able to deliver the services that they were built to deliver. So I hope that we can see the change that we need and keep this campaign going. And thank you to Helen and Jimmy and all of the team for keeping this on our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. And I call on the Minister. And Minister, you have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thanks to Gemma Dolan for bringing the adjournment debate. I will always embrace an opportunity to talk about the SWAH. The South West Acute Hospital is a gem, in my view. It's a wonderful facility. Great building, very, very modern. But I go back to my normal formula: to deliver health and social care, you need 5 things. You need the buildings, you need the beds, you need the equipment and the medicines. But those 4 as of nothing if you don't have the 5th right, and that's the workforce. And the workforce in SWAH are magnificent. And I was down with them recently, as Diana Armstrong said, and I was getting the same message I actually got from Daisy Hill when I was last there. Never mind praising us for what we're doing, give us the ability to do more. And there's a great appetite amongst the workforce in SWAH to do more. And I want to facilitate that, if I may. So let me just be clear on this point. The SWAH, as far as I'm concerned, has a very long and a secure future ahead of it. And I understand why much of the public discussion has been about the temporary suspension of emergency general surgery, which has been in place, as we've remarked, since November 2022. I would prefer it if we had a little bit of balance there, and perhaps talked up a lot of the stuff that SWAH does, rather than the one service that it does not do at present. Because the SWAH does support a wide range of planned care activity, diagnostics, outpatient services, day case procedures. They operate a busy emergency department, ensuring patients can access care closer to home where it's safe and appropriate to do so. And you do have those 2 theatres that were not commissioned. Well, one has been commissioned. The independent service sector is now delivering hips and knees. And I think over 70% of the patients who go in for a hip or a knee replacement leave the same day. When Diana and I were down, we saw a man who was being taken around the corridors on crutches by the physio, who was just out of surgery. And in fact, the reason why a lot of the 30% stay overnight is because they aren't going through their procedure until sort of mid to late afternoon. So it's not safe to send them home. It's a wonderful, wonderful hospital doing wonderful things. So I don't really get why there's a narrative that slowly but surely services are being stripped away and the hospital is being downgraded. That is simply not the case. Yes, the temporary suspension of EGS has caused huge concern, but let's focus as well on what it does do. It's 14 years old. It's never been busier. It has never been busier or as active as it is today, delivering surgical procedures. Record numbers from across Fermanagh and Tyrone, and sometimes further afield, are treated in the SWAH. So when we look at the issue of cross-border working more generally, the idea of north-south collaboration in health and social care is not new, and it's something we are already doing. And you know I stand here as a unionist MLA with no political or ideological objection to cross-border cooperation in healthcare. In fact, quite the opposite. Because when you look at the border through the lens of health and social care, the last thing it defines is difference. People have the same needs and the same challenges in the border counties, whether they're northern or southern counties. But I would say, I did hear Gemma Dolan discuss north-south cooperation in healthcare, contextualised within her desire for a new Ireland, which means constitutional change. And that is your right, but I'm saying as the Minister for Health, I am not going to bring party politics into my role. So in border regions, perhaps in particular, it makes absolute sense we should look for opportunities to work together. It's not just border areas, and I think Danny referenced this. When you get to things like rare diseases, some clinical trials, the population of Northern Ireland isn't big enough. In fact, there are some clinical trials, the population of the Republic of Ireland isn't big enough. So an all-island approach to bring in 7 million people is the only way to do it. So that's another example I would just give you of where it makes absolute sense. And I think there are a number of positive examples of cross-border cooperation within the Western Trust. So, for example, they established mutual aid arrangements between the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service and the National Ambulance Service in Ireland. This allows for cross-border support in emergency situations. Ambulance crews regularly cross the border while undertaking both routine transfer journeys and when responding to respective emergency calls. And actually, at the last North-South sectoral meeting on health, Jennifer Carroll McNeill and I tasked officials to go away and look at areas where qualifications are asymmetrical. In other words, somebody who's delivering health and social care here cannot work on the other side of the border, and vice versa. So what we want for the next sectoral meeting is a list. Here are all the qualifications that are not in tune, and then we'll figure out a work programme to try and address that. But in terms, again, of the Western Trust and cross-border cooperation, there's participation in services delivered through the Cooperation and Working Together Partnership, that's the COT partnership, and I was delighted to go down to the Mellon country not that long ago and celebrate some of the money coming in from European Peace. Access also to all-island clinical networks in specialised areas of care, such as congenital heart disease services and those cancer services in the North West Cancer Centre at Alnagelvin. So, in my time, I have had the honour of seeing first-hand examples of collaboration and how those benefit the people here and across the border in the most profound way. They show cross-border solutions can and do work, where there is a clear service need, where there is clinical support, and where appropriate governance arrangements are in place. Of course, as we've seen on various occasions before, whilst cross-border working may appear straightforward in principle, the reality is often much more difficult. So we do have a range of practical considerations that we have to work through, and I've mentioned the ones Jennifer and I have agreed on. None of it's insurmountable, but it does require detailed engagement, and that's engagement with clinicians, regulator, commissioners, system partners and stakeholders on both sides of the border. But I'm going to give you a commitment. After this debate, I'll expect a further assurance from officials that the Department and the Western Trust are fully maximising the cross-border potential of the SWAH and the communities that it is serving. I also want to give you a commitment that I share your frustration that in July I asked them to pause the public consultation because I didn't think it was good. I mean, there was no consultation event in Omagh. I thought that was a mistake. The one in Enniskillen was coming, I think from memory, was it the 13th of July? Wasn't a good date to my mind. Anyway, I'm glad that the Trust paused and then cancelled that consultation. I do want them to produce that vision document. They've had a significant number of months. We can't wait forever, because that should be the foundational document going forward. Anya asked about whether I had requested the Western Health and Social Care Trust develop a fully costed business case for the establishment of a new EGS service at the South West Acute. That's the wrong way round. It's up to the Trust to decide what services they're going to provide. And if they want to come to me with a fully costed plan to reintroduce emergency general surgery, I will look at it within the time frames and the procedures that we have. But you are actually just reversing the process. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's not possible in the interim to reinstate EGS in the SWAH. We don't have the additional funding to do that at the moment. And it has to be read into the record again. The reason we had this temporary suspension is because SWAH did not meet the standards identified through the review of general surgery, and it would require, quote, fundamental change in a number of areas to do so. So when the temporary suspension came into place, it was due to safety issues experienced by the Trust in securing sufficient substantive consultant general surgeons to reliably sustain an out-of-hours rota for emergency general surgery in the SWAH. There was no interventional radiology. There were other issues at play, and it was the right thing to do in terms of patient safety to bring in that temporary suspension. It is up now to the Western Trust to bring forward a plan, if that is their desire, to reinstate EGS, but before that they have to give us the vision for the future of the SWAH, which is a wonderful hospital with a great future.
Thank you, Ministers. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and safe travels back to Fermanagh when you're going tonight. Take it easy down those roads there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. The Assembly is adjourned. The Assembly is adjourned. Thank you.